Residential tech talk. Residential tech talk.
Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. And in this episode, I'm joined by my good friend and frequent contributor, Henry Clifford. When he's not writing tech articles and product reviews for us, Henry leads the team at Livewire, a custom integration firm in Richmond, Virginia. I'm really not one to brag, but I am proud to say that I was the first person to hire Henry as a professional writer. We met several years ago at the CDO Business Exchange Conference, and Henry's insight during one of our brainstorming sessions really impressed me. And once I found out that he also studied journalism in college, I knew we had to work together. So I'm really happy that Henry could join us today. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, Jeremy. It's great to see you, and thanks for having me on the show.
How are you doing during these crazy times? I mean, it's not normal. How are you managing?
It's interesting. It's just one day at a time, and I'm personally an introvert, and not in the sense of not being outgoing. I think that term's often maybe misunderstood, but the way when I use that term, it's where do you draw your energy? And I spent a lot of time by myself, like distance running or flying airplanes or just thinking. And so the quarantine piece, I get to spend a lot of time with family. And I know there's a lot of people hurting out there, and it's tough running an integration business during these times. So we're choosing to make the best out of it and find the good in every day and just take it day by day.
Yeah, I hear you on the introvert thing. That's definitely my personality. And I work from home to begin with, so it's not changed a whole lot for me personally, although it's actually kind of nice to have company in the house. Typically, I'm looking at the clock around 3:30, 3:45 when the kids are going to start coming home from the bus stop. And frankly, I kind of like to have that interaction on a daily basis because it shortens my day a little bit. Now I've got them home all day. They're working in their rooms doing their schoolwork. My wife's at home as well. It's been great to have everyone around. At night, we tend to reach our limit at times. So there are those moments, but it's been different for that. Obviously, it's tough for business, and you worry about that. What from your day to day on the business side, what has changed for you? You're an essential worker per se, according to the federal government. What are you doing differently than you had been? What are you still able to do that you had been doing before?
Well, it's interesting. Our business was set up from the get-go to be run in the cloud. And a lot of that came from my work experiences having what I would call a job in the 90s, and having to go to an office and report and sit in a cubicle and go to meetings and things like that. So at Livewire, we really talk about results, and everybody has a scorecard where they really know that they've got 2 or 3 things that they can control. And if they do those things really well, then the company improves, and everybody sort of improves along the way as well. So a lot of that infrastructure it's not really impacted by the coronavirus because we had a cloud phone system. We've been working in the cloud really since the very beginning. I feel like the big shifts have been just the personal, I'd call it management by walking around, the ability just to kind of have these ad hoc one-off conversations with folks. And I guess I could use these virtual happy hours that people have been having as a really good example. I mean, nobody has a happy hour with the Brady Bunch grid. It's a series of, you may, at the beginning when you walk in, everybody might say hi and there's a group conversation, but you're eventually pairing off and you're having these one-to-one check-ins with folks as the happy hour goes on. And generally the takeaways have been, I had one-to-one check-ins with these people, and the physical happy hour managed to sort of help that along versus the Brady Bunch grid. doesn't do that. So I think whoever invents this way of fixing that from a virtual perspective is going to make a lot of money. But that's been probably the biggest thing, is that creativity lives in a lot of those chance encounters and interactions, that where your office doors open and somebody just comes in and says, hey, what do you think? And now we're all sort of calling each other and, hey, checking in. One of my guys just called me and my adrenaline just sort of went up a little bit, but really he was just calling to say hello and check in. And so, and then our guys in the field, obviously this is the biggest rub, is the whole narrative is shifted to work from home. Well, we're integrators, and the last time I checked, you can't pull wire from home. You can't hang a TV from home. And so some of the narratives I found a little insulting to a good majority of the people that work at our company. And so I spent a good amount of time talking to our folks and saying that the work you're doing every single day is huge, and it's keeping the company going, and you're putting yourself at risk. And thank you so much for everything you're doing for us, and let us know what we can do, and try to just be there to listen. But I other than our design center shut down, but it's amazing just how adaptable people become very quickly. We've shifted to doing these virtual sales consultations. We've shifted to doing virtual service calls. We've shifted to just catering to what people are thinking about now, and even today, just thinking about new ideas and new ways to sort of cater to that new environment and shifting. But as far as our back office, our workflow, the way that we're able to go about our business, I feel like a lot of those tools we had set up to begin with to be able to function in an environment like this.
So you're in an area, unlike someone I spoke to the other day, Chris Smith, who's in the New York City area. He basically evacuated. He's managing remotely. His staff is down. He's got a bit of them furloughed, and he's got a pretty lean operation at this point until things are allowed to resume. You're in an area like I am where you can operate as an essential business. Are you seeing the clients are receptive to having your teams stop by for service calls if necessary? Are you working on new projects at this point? Has that changed for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's subjective. So just like everything else in our business, it seems like it's sort of depends who you ask. I mean, some clients want us in the home, and they're fine with the steps that we're taking to protect ourselves and to protect them. Some folks don't want us anywhere near, and they want to push it until after all this blows over. It just really depends on the urgency, and then I think the personality around, do they have elderly folks in the home? Do they have young kids in the home? What's their own perspective on germs and disease and things like that? Phobias, all that comes into play. And the other thing we've been noticing is businesses that have shut down, who maybe they had to, or they just decided to, or they were owned by a larger corporate entity. Some of those folks who had contracts with those larger entities have been calling us saying, hey, they're shut down. Are you guys open? And so we've done probably 2 or 3 projects here in the last few weeks where they were just unable to get service anywhere else. So I won't say there's a last man standing thing going on here, but at the same time, there's definitely scarcity. And I'm not sure the demand is not falling off the cliff. People are they're sitting in their homes. A lot of our folks who are higher net worth folks are sitting there, and they've, to some extent, a lot of them have been, this is an inconvenience. They're sitting in their home, they're staring at whatever it is they didn't upgrade, looking at it, and it's bothering them. And that's leading them to contact us and say, hey, my network's terrible. My TV is not big enough, or maybe it's broken, or my kids are driving me insane because they say things are slow. And so some of that is want to, and then some of that is have to. So some of the more network infrastructure type upgrades, the pieces and parts where obviously I've talked a lot about remote support in these on these projects, and the folks that never thought that having remote support was important. These are the same folks, to answer your question about folks wanting us to come in or out. The folks that don't want us anywhere near are the folks who are now saying, oh, I see. This is why remote support is important, and it can help me solve my problem.
Well, you wrote a great article for us about coronavirus 2020, helping the world from home. And I want to talk about that. But first, before we continue our conversation with Livewire's Henry Clifford, here's a quick word from today's sponsor.
Thank you for listening to Residential Tech Talks. Today's episode is brought to you by Atlona, the new leaders in AV solutions. Atlona prides themselves on being an agile company that develops innovative and reliable products to solve the challenges facing today's AV industry. Equally important is their customer commitment to be easy to do business with and provide you with the industry's best back-end support program. Visit www.atlona.com to learn more.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back. We're talking with Livewire's Henry Clifford. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today was that you wrote a great article for Residential Tech Today about coronavirus 2020 and how you have to change the way you go about your day-to-day operations working with clients. And across the country, we're in different situations depending on the severity of the outbreak and local and state rules. But we're gonna post a link to the article in our podcast description. But if you could just tell us a little bit about one of the things that some of the stuff you wrote about staying, working from home as a business owner, and the touchless sale that you described, how that works.
Sure. Yeah. So I wrote the article as a means of just really leaning into the notion that it's important for us all to pivot and adapt very quickly to the environment that we find ourselves in over the last 30, 45 days. And really, some of that is us coming up with great ideas. And then some of it is just really dealing with the new kinds of questions that we've found ourselves getting. Questions like, my network has dead spots, or I'm worried that my network might not be secure. It's really interesting. I was thinking about myself in my house the other day before all the quarantine, and at the end of the day, I mean, we're in our homes Saturday and Sunday, and then during the evenings, and now it's totally changed. We're actually living in our homes all the time. And so any little crack in the foundation that was there before has now really just become a real structural liability. And so that's probably been the first wave of inquiries we've been dealing with around the network. And really for us, it's sort of pushing the question too, because the rest of it, as it sits on the network, if it's not configured properly, if the network wasn't configured properly, the rest of it's just going to be a failure, total failure. And then because of this sense of the home being this sort of protective cocoon, people want to make sure their home security is their physical home security, not just their digital windows and doors, but their physical windows and doors are as safe and secure as possible. And so we'll get folks who have maybe had it on their list that they wanted us to make sure that a part of the yard wasn't covered, or our door wasn't covered, or again, it's just that fear factor. It's just people want to make sure that their fortress, their home, is as secure as possible. And again, that's not us sort of going out and creating fear or using fear to sell. It's just these are valid concerns, and we're a security company, and so that's what we'll do. And we'll also really help to say, okay, the scenario where the ninjas are coming in at 3 a.m. in a helicopter and roping in and cutting a hole in your roof. I mean, that's possible, but not probable. And so just helping them sound out more realistic scenarios. And then at the end of the day too, it's to your point earlier when you asked the question, Jeremy, do people want us in their home or do they not? And the answer is yes or no, depending on the person. And so for us, it's been about becoming more ubiquitous. So if you want us virtual, we're virtual. If you want us on site, we're on site. If you want us to FaceTime you for the sales and be on site for the service, that's fine. We are at all times want to be kind of Baskin Robbins, right? Some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla, some people like strawberry. Fine. We're not going to debate you as to which flavor is the best. That's not for us who's on first. It's all about when you're thinking about ice cream, you're thinking about us. When you're thinking about technology, you think of Livewire. And so again, it's just adding some more flavors because of the world we're living in right now. And to that end too, it's in the spirit of support. It's enhancing that remote support capability. And I said in the article, and I'll say it again, yes, I'm a co-founder of Parasol. This is not a plug for the 24/7 remote support company that I helped start. It's just straight up good common sense to help support your customers remotely a little better. And especially if that helps avoid rolling a truck, the customer loves that. And then the integrator loves that as well, because it's just much more efficient. And I think that this time of us all having to work differently is maybe putting us all to the question a little bit more about, did we have to really get in the car to go somewhere, or could we have done it remotely? And every integrator out there listening to this or watching this knows that a truck roll is the least profitable thing ever. Instead of exhaust coming out of the tailpipe, they're dollar bills. And then not necessarily directly related, but a place where we can be helpful is helping our customers with working from home. I mean, really, if you think about it, everybody now is a mini broadcaster, and everybody's got you got to have your lights set up, and you got to sit up straight and smile and make eye contact. All these things are now so important, especially in a sales dynamic or in a work environment. And if you sort of shrunk down and it's dark in the room, you're not getting the promotion. Or you're not going to sell the widget. And so, again, for us, it's just being helpful. And it doesn't make us any money, but it's not about that. It's about leaning in and doing the right thing for our customers. So those are the things we've identified so far. And next week, we'll probably find 5 or 6 more things.
Right. Well, so I will allow the Parasol conversation to go a little bit further, even though you're being, a little modest about it. Are you seeing an uptick in that business from your perspective as a partner?
So it's interesting. Some of the business is down. Our traditional, as an integrator, our traditional project revenue is off a little bit. Physical service revenue is up, and then the subscription or services revenue is up over 100%, just in the last 30 days, just since the beginning of March. And so, yes, it's way up, and again, not because of any sales efforts or anything on our part. It's just happens to be good timing, and a place where the idea, which was a good idea before, is now a really good idea in the context of not, in some cases, being able to go out there. And I think about. I think I wrote about this in another article, but I was sitting there as a Boy Scout in Boy Scout camp, taking life-saving merit badge, and they talk about the orders of rescue. And the first thing you do is you reach, and then you throw, and then you row, and the last possible thing you do is go. Because if there's one victim in the water, the last thing you want is 2 victims in the water. And so in the world of tech integration, I always feel like the last thing you want to do is get in the truck and go somewhere. So reaching, throwing, rowing, all of those from a virtual perspective, if you're able to use something like Domotes or Oversea or Backpack or any of these tools that we have in our industry to remotely reach, throw, and row to our customer, or use these virtual like Help Lightning or FaceTime or Skype or even tools like we're using right now. These are all support mechanisms that enable us to deliver customer service and happiness in a much more efficient and profitable way.
I see that as a new normal going forward after the quarantine. I hope everyone embraces that option. And I know it's a little different when you have CEOs in their homes. You're able to FaceTime with them or go on a different device with them. Whereas, in the normal time period, they're going to be harder to reach. But are you seeing other current situations become, we're not going to be coming out of the quarantine completely unscathed. There's going to be a transitional period there where we may be required to wear masks in certain places for a while. There's other scenarios with gloves. I'm not sure where we're headed, but with your operation already being out there in the field, do you see some of this continuing on for a while where your new normal is masked? Not only the booties that you've always worn when you walk in someone's home as a respect thing so your shoes don't get on their carpet, but wearing masks and gloves on a regular basis. So are you thinking that's going to be the new normal for a while?
I do. I feel like some of it's theatrical and some of it is necessary. Maybe half of it's necessary and half of it's theatrical, but we just don't know which half. So I feel like theatrics on the part of our industry or any vendor, any home service vendor or cleaning people. Hey, if you're coming in the home, there's going to be, I think, a mashup of theatrics and just good old fashioned common sense. We're not going to shake hands, no physical contact, that kind of thing. And then I think we're also going to ask ourselves the question, which I feel like we should have been asking all along. Do we really need to go? Do we really need to go? This whole deal around FaceTime and needing to physically be somewhere, no matter what. And I think that will be a byproduct of this as well. And for outfits that are more results oriented, that's going to be no big deal. For outfits that were more old school and we're more into this sort of everybody comes in and sits down and 100-year-old thinking, I think that'll be tougher for them to adapt.
So on a lighter note, what are you doing personally to stay sane? You talk about the introversion. Are you escaping into any TV shows these days that you haven't been able to catch up with because you're too busy? Are you more busy than you've ever been?
I feel like I'm busier than I've been in 20 years. At the same time, I happen to have watched the latest season of Ozark, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the finest pieces of TV ever made. I haven't been listening to my Audible books, which I usually listen to in the car. And it just makes me realize like how much time I spend in the car. I like distance running. And then I like to fly small airplanes, but I haven't been up in the sky in a while because I feel like, well, two things. One, it's the whole social distancing. And then two, I feel like there's no more of an expression of saying, I have cash to set on fire than flying small airplanes. And so I have a hard time justifying, getting in a Cessna right now when we're in the middle of this. So but for me, the running helps me stay sane. That's my big that's my medicine.
That's great. I agree with you on the Ozark, and I've been watching a few other things out there that were on my schedule, but frankly, I just couldn't get around to them. I found that I was falling behind on my podcast for a while just because there wasn't that downtime that I had before. I felt like my need to be seen and be heard was even more so these days than it had been before. So kind of got a new routine. My exercise hasn't been as great, but I'm going to be finding some better options there. I love going away to the gym, and I need to find a way to make that home experience more fulfilling.
Yeah.
But, it's good to hear you've got the running going. That's good for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Henry. I really appreciate your time. If anyone wants to reach out for you for some advice, obviously they can check in on your articles on the website for Residential Tech Today. But what about reaching out to you personally? Do you prefer like a Twitter kind of thing, LinkedIn? What do you like the best?
Our social media is very easy. It's all at Get Livewire, and then email. You can get me on our website at getlivewire.com. And I love listening, learning, helping others, and that's I've benefited from that kind of thing tremendously in my career, and so I feel this need to pay it forward. So if I can help, let me know. I've had a few folks contacting me in recent days because of the CEDIA content now is free. So they've been listening to CEDIA course content, and they've been reaching out to me about recurring revenue. So I can tell that some of that is people are using the downtime for learning, which is great. And I love this whole CEDIA hashtag CEDIA strong thing that's going on right now. So it's good stuff. And thank you again for having me.
We really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us today on Residential Tech Talks. Have a great day.
Residential Tech Talks, lighting specialist, residential tech,
Home automation device, home or smart